Golden State Media Concepts social media podcast. Time to hashtag everything. We talk about all the fun, crazy stories on social media. From Instagram to Facebook, Twitter to Tumblr, or probably even Friendster. Join us each week as we explore the quirky side of social media. It's the Golden State Media Concepts social media podcast.
It's simple, such a sad song. The one that we rely on to get us.
Hello, and thank you for tuning in to another episode of GSMC Social Media News Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Shamaria Jackson, and here is where we can get the latest tea on anything from celebrity gossip to breaking news in general. So stay tuned. We have a lot of topics that we are going to cover, from Adele's $171 million private divorce to prisoners seeking a release from a prison due to the COVID-19. All of that coming up right after the break. Stay tuned. Okay, so it's the beginning of April, and the country's first 5,000 deaths from the COVID-19 occurred in just a month. And the second 5,000 came in less than 5 days. There is some good news with the hospitals in New York having somewhat of a break. The number of hospitalizations have been relatively flat. The death toll may be more than 40% of U.S. deaths, but that is less than it was before, meaning that there is a sign that there is some type of improvement. And speaking of improvement, there's also a sign of improvement in the West Coast, which is where the virus first surged in the United States. Governor Andrew Cuomo said, quote, "There's an understanding that although times are hard, there has to be order for our country to get rid of this virus and to be able to get out of the house. We have to do everything we can, meaning self-quarantining ourselves and social distancing ourselves, even if it is for a funeral." On my last podcast, I talked about the 15 people in New Jersey who were arrested for attending a funeral. It was about 200 people, and out of that 200, 15 people were arrested, again, because things just got very unruly. Governor Andrew Cuomo also said, quote, "I understand how the religious service can help with the grieving process, but as a society, this is far too risky," end quote. In my opinion, I can definitely understand what he's saying. It's just way too risky to go in groups of 10 or more, or even risking your health, just stepping out to go do something as simple as going to the grocery store. But however, on the same end, I can see what other people are talking about. This is a grieving process, and sometimes it goes with the religious process as well. So at one point, do you kind of distinguish between, doing something that society has told you to do and doing something that is with your religion? As far as, New Yorkers maintaining a sense of discipline and, suppressing their impulse to gather in parks or streets, I think it's kind of harder in New York for them to not be able to gather. Because if you've ever been to New York, it's a very gathered city. There's a lot of people that are on top of people. So it's going to be very hard for people to kind of social distance themselves because, once again, the city's tiny. To some, it may be big, but it's actually very tiny. And then you have shops that are small. You have stores that, you just have no way. You have to go and you have to be under people in some sort of sense. So that part is kind of hard. Taxis are expensive. So how do you kind of get to and from where you have to go without being under someone? You're saying social distance yourself, but I believe in New York City, it's just so hard to social distance yourself because, once again, it's a super packed city. Somewhere in Texas, you may be able to get away with social distancing. I'm from Texas, so it's very easy for us to social distance ourselves, but it's harder for them. I feel like there's an improvement in California, again, because you have that option of driving where you want to drive. You have that option of distancing yourselves. Whereas in New York, you kind of really don't have that option. And it might not be where we want, but it's better than where we were. So we have to look at the positive side on that. Like, yes, this is 40% of U.S. deaths, but 40% is a lot better than 60. The deaths are slowly dwindling down to hopefully where we'll be at none. And we can go back to living in, normal times. And speaking of, the COVID-19, I just wanted to let you guys know that this whole segment, majority of the segment, is going to be talking about the COVID-19 because there's so much that's going on. And coming up after the break, more COVID-19 news. This time, it's regarding prisoners from prison and how the governor from Ohio may be releasing some inmates because of the COVID-19. So I'm going to tell you guys about that right after this short commercial break. Stay tuned.
But nothing seems to work. Well, listen close. Golden State Media Concepts has got something great for you. The Health and Wellness Podcast dedicated to workout trends, healthy eating habits, diet, and everything about healthy living. Join us in our banters as we help you not just live life to the fullest, but live it to the healthiest.
Welcome back. Before the break, I was talking about the break on the hospitalization in New York. And although the death toll in New York is still high in regards to the COVID-19, there is still some glimmer of hope because not only did the death toll drop, but also because there is a sign of improvement where the virus first surged, which was in the West Coast. But what about the prisoners in prison? How are they dealing with the COVID-19 virus, especially with them being in a confined space with 10 or more people on a daily basis? On my past podcasts, I was saying, and remember I said this, I said, how are they going to deal with prisoners who catch the COVID-19? Because there are a lot of officers who leave, go home. They are actually out in the world and they could possibly get, the virus from someone who doesn't even know that they have the virus. So how are they going to deal with that once it comes into the prison? So an Ohio prison has had an outbreak. 5 prisoners at the Marion Correctional Institution and 5 inmates at the Pickaway Correctional has tested positive. It has come to no surprise that a total of 27 staff members, mostly at the Marion Correctional Institution, has tested positive. The governor of Ohio, Mike DeWine, said prisoners who will be under consideration for release are people who have nonviolent offenses. So he said those who are serving time for nonviolent offenses and those who might be getting close to their release date. They might be getting an earlier release date. The Ohio governor has also said that he will authorize the Ohio National Guard to assist with inmates at the federal prison. He also asked the federal prison, He also asked the federal government not to admit any more prisoners to the Marion Correction Institute. With that being said, a number of prisoners ranging from drug traffickers to fraudsters to accused rapists and so on and so forth are being aided by defense lawyers suing for their release, usually citing underlying health issues that might make them at risk of catching coronavirus. However, like the governor stated, they are only looking at those who are serving for nonviolent offenses. Some examples of nonviolent offenses may be theft, embezzlement, arson, contract crimes, fraud, basically any form of a white-collar crime. There's also various drug and alcohol-related crimes, prostitution, gambling, bribery, and traffic offenses. Again, those are only some of nonviolent offenses. The list actually goes on and on. My opinion of this situation, I like the fact that he is using nonviolent crimes because there's actually a lot of people in prison right now who is in jail for drug and alcohol related crimes that have a sentence that they shouldn't be sentenced to. But again, that's another story for another day. I don't really want to quite get into that. Otherwise, I'm going to have you guys here all day. I personally, I knew it was going to happen. I knew that a prison system was going to get an outbreak. It's just too far-fetched for the prison not to catch a case. And as far as them saying, okay, well, we're not going to bring anyone else into this institution, I feel like they should have been testing people, the people who were getting signed to go into prison. I felt like they should have already tested them. Like before they even stepped a foot inside of the cell or even inside of the prison, I felt like they should have tested them to make sure that that person didn't have outbreak. Because the people coming in could have had coronavirus or even the staff could have had coronavirus. So I felt like there should have been another form of testing to ensure the safety of everyone's health. Not only the staff, but of the prisoners as well. I feel like they're obviously going to do a better job into looking as to who they're possibly going to be releasing, which may count as a good thing or a bad thing. Again, it depends on the person. And I don't really want to get into that again, or I might have you guys here all day, and I don't want to do that. I also have to look at the families. Okay. So it's very good that, some people are getting out. From what I have read, there are a lot of people who are closer to their time getting out that may be getting out and who may not be getting out. Again, it also depends on the warden. You're also looking at paperwork that's possibly going to go into figuring out which inmate would or would not be coming out. I think they're going to take the time to look and see, how that person's actions may or may not affect if that person is going to be released. So I don't think they're just going to release anyone. I don't. Again, which may be a good or a bad thing. But I think things are just really high. I think things are really in the air. Again, I feel like there was not enough preparation because, if an outbreak could go from one side of the country or one side of the nation to the next, and then it can go from one state to the next so rapidly and so quickly, and people obviously know it. And we've had death tolls that has obviously risen. Jobs have been. People are unemployed. So obviously when people are unemployed and their bills are stacking up, they're going to do everything that they can to make sure that their bills are paid and food is on their plate. So obviously with that being said, crime is going to go up, which may mean that the prison system may increase because there's going to be a lot of theft. I just want to know, what are these steps into, like, there's no steps. This right here is turning into a madhouse, because now they're saying, well, don't take any more prisoners at this location, which is going to possibly overflow the prison system at the next location. So they're saying basically, don't bring any more inmates to the Marion Correction Institution. So that's going to force prisoners to going into the Parkaway prison system. It's going to overflow, basically, and then you're going to have another outbreak of COVID-19. So how are you actually going to deal with that? Are you saying that everyone who's a nonviolent criminal, they're going to get out? But at the same time, you have to look and see. So while you're looking and seeing if an inmate has, a good record, a quote unquote good record, and they're getting out, but then you have two people coming in, that's just creating, an overflow at this location. And many people could also say that some of those guys coming in may be nonviolent criminals as well, because they're only stealing to save their family or to put food on their plate, because they're out of a job and they have to pay for rent. So these things are getting tough, and I can definitely see, why things are playing out the way they're playing out. But I mean, just the question of, when are we going to catch a break? I mean, you can't really catch a break in life, but just, can you throw me a line? Like, when are things going to go back to normal? When are we going to finally say, man, I miss when I could go to the movies, or I miss going to the mall, or just walking around in general? When are we going to go back to normal? And coming up after the break, I'm going to give you 4 benchmarks that researchers recently gave us in order for things to go back to normal. Is this the new norm? Is this what we're having to look forward to? Or is this something that we are now going to have moving forward? That's all coming up right after the break.
You've been searching. The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
Welcome back. For those of you just now joining us, my name is Shamaria Jackson, and you're listening to the GSMC Social Media News Podcast, hosted by the GSMC Podcast Network. And I just covered how many prisoners from prison are seeking for a release because of the outbreaks in some prisons. And also how the Ohio Governor Mike DeWine has made the decision to possibly release some prisoners with nonviolent crimes. And I was talking to you guys about basically how everything around us has switched up. The norm isn't so normal anymore. We are self-quarantining ourselves. We are social distancing ourselves. But is this something that is now furthermore going to be a normal thing? So will we not be able to look forward to just walking around the mall? Will we not be able to go to the movies and actually sit down and watch a new movie coming out? Like, is this the normal that we have to look forward to? And I told you guys that there's 4 things that we must, 4 benchmarks that we have to check off before we can officially go back to normal, or what we perceive is the norm. And according to the New York Times Post, we must first make sure hospitals are able to safely treat all patients regarding hospitalization without resorting to crisis standards of care. That means having adequate beds, ventilators, and staff. The authorities must be able to test everyone who has symptoms and get reliable results quickly. That would mean it could be more than 750,000 tests a week in the United States. Health agencies must be able to monitor confirmed cases, trace contact of the infected, and have at-risk people go into isolation or quarantine. And finally, there must be a sustained reduction in cases for at least 14 days, because it can take that long for symptoms to appear. So their first one, which was, make sure hospitals are able to safely treat patients that's requiring hospitalization without resorting to crisis standards of care. And that means having adequate beds, ventilators, and staff. Although we are doing it, the hospitals have become so congested with people who have the coronavirus. And that's only setting more people up to catching the coronavirus. Because once again, these nurses, these doctors, these health specialists are on the front line of getting the COVID-19. And, not all of these hospitals have the adequate amount of beds, the adequate amount of ventilators, or even staff, because a lot of these staff members are now getting sick. In one of my other podcasts, I was talking to you about some hospitals that have banned nurses from wearing a mask or even gloves, even though, the president, the White House, and everyone that's higher up has said and warned everyone must wear gloves, everyone must wear a mask. So it's kind of like, it's a never-ending cycle. That's what it is. It never stops. The sick person gets sick. The sick person doesn't know they're sick. They finally get their symptoms. They leave it off to someone else. That person gets sick. And then it just keeps going and keeps going and keeps going. So we first need to make sure that our hospitals are good. We need to make sure that patients are actually getting treated, okay? And they are being self-quarantined, which is what they keep telling us. Everyone on social media, every time I click on Twitter, every time I click on Instagram, every time I get on Snapchat, all I see is stay at home, stay at home, stay at home. And it should come to no surprise that a lot of people are not staying home. They just cannot stay in one spot. Do I blame them? No. It gets so hard looking at the same walls day in and day out. It gets so hard being around your family or being around your loved ones when you want to leave and just get out and smell the fresh air. It gets so hard. But a lot of people who do have the coronavirus and know that they have the coronavirus are not staying at home. Or maybe they had the coronavirus, they started feeling better, and they spoke too soon. So they went out, they were like, oh, I feel better. That's enough. They got out and they left. No mask, no gloves, no nothing, because they thought they were feeling better. And it turns out that they were not even fully recovered. Which again, it turns into a never-ending cycle. Which brings me into my next one. Not everyone has health insurance to ensure that they are safe or, that they are healthy, which goes into being able to test everyone who has symptoms and get reliable results quickly. How much is that going to cost? Because again, like I just said, not everyone has health insurance. So even though some people are like, well, stay at home, there's other reasons to go out. You have to go out to get food. You have to go out to eat. Some people have no choice. They are part of the essential. If you were in an apartment and your AC broke or, a pipe busted, you have to have someone to repair it, don't you? Some of those people do not have health insurance. So what are you going to do? How are they going to be able to get the reliable results quickly without having the funds for it? And just like they were saying, finally, having a reduction in cases for at least 14 days. So I believe that they're also saying, being able to stay, even though you're feeling better after you possibly had the COVID or you're not feeling well, staying in isolation an extra 14 days. Maybe that is what they're saying at the same time. It is a lot to go off of. The coronavirus it's not our best topic. It brings us into a lot of realization, not only about ourselves, but of society as well. And just never-ending questions that we may have that could benefit not only ourselves, but your loved ones, and then their friends and family, and so on and so forth. So this is for not only ourselves, but for society. And that is so much to cover. It's a lot to go through that I don't believe that we even have time to go through and to cover. So for that, I'm just going to leave that little nugget in your ear. And those were the 4 benchmarks that we would have to cover in order for us to go back to being normal, having a normal society. And I'm saying that in quotes because sometimes our norm is different from other people's norms. So you have to think about that as well. So after the break, we have some much needed celebrity gossip. So grab those teacups because we have a lot of tea, of hot tea that we are going to cover coming up right after the break. Stay tuned.
Event, romantic, comedy, or action flick. This show has got it all covered. They talk some what to go see now. Don't bother. What's hot on Netflix and everything in between. That's GSMCpodcast.com/movie-podcast. When it's all about the movies, it has to be this new show. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
Welcome back. Before the break, I was telling you guys about 4 benchmarks that we would have to have in order for us to go back to being normal. And it's a lot that I feel like we can cover, but a lot that we are missing in order for us to go back to being normal, or what some of us consider normal. And speaking of normal, some cute news that broke the social media scene is that Jeannie Mai and Jeezy recently got engaged. For those of you who do not know, Jeannie Mai is a host from the daytime Emmy-winning show The Real. She is also a stylist from the show How Do I Look? To rapper and songwriter Jeezy, or Young Jeezy. His real name is Jay Jenkins, and he has been on the scene for a very long time. The two got engaged after 2 years of dating, and Jeannie Mai says that it was actually in late March that they got engaged, but as we all know, reports hit the scene just this week. Sources say that his original plan was to propose in Vietnam, but got creative while in quarantine. The two reportedly had a quarantine date night, which was filled with Vietnamese food and decor. And Jeannie Mai looks so happy with Jeezy, and you can tell that she's just had a total transformation from, being happily married on the real to going through a nasty divorce with her ex-husband, Freddie, to now being back in love and now being engaged to Jeezy, which was refreshing because we just love to see all the ladies on the real, which is good because I just love seeing all the ladies from the real happy and just being able to just see that they're happy with their lives and their endeavors. However, me as a realist, I have to look at the overall picture. And I hate to rain on this parade, but I just want Jenny to continue being happy. So here's what I mean. In the past on the show, she said, quote, "I was very clear about the fact that I would not want kids just because I've never felt that," end quote. Jeezy, if you do not know, he has 3 kids. He has one adult son who's about 22. He has a teenage son who I believe is about 13 or 14. And then he has a daughter who I want to say she's about 3. Yeah, so she's a toddler. And Jeannie Mai said she doesn't want kids. So I just have a lot of red flags in this situation. If Jeannie Mai said she doesn't want kids, has she met his kids? So she might not worry really about the 22-year-old, but she also has to understand that these 2 other kids are Jeezy's kids. So how is she going to deal with that? How is she going to deal with being a stepmother, especially for someone who said she doesn't want kids? Is she going to keep him from his kids? Is he actually going to take the time out for his kids? Is she going to hold him up to understanding, hey, these are your kids? Like, how is she going to deal with that? These are actual questions. And she's always saying that she's in love on the real, and there's nothing wrong with being in love. Nothing at all. But at one point, when do you take off your love goggles and really look at life? This is a real situation that she's about to get into. Meaning she is going to go from being someone who has never had to worry about kids to being someone who has to worry about kids. She is stepping into being a mom. She is going to be these kids' stepmother. So how is she going to deal with that? Again, I am happy for Jeannie Mai. I really am. I just want her to make the right choices. Because I don't want her in that same situation again, where she was on the real. And if not if it wasn't every show, it was every other show where she was talking about Freddie and talking about how sad she was and talking about the divorce and talking about something that was sad and making her sad. I want to make sure that she's making the right choice for her life. Am I saying she shouldn't marry Jeezy? No way. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying, what are your steps into ensuring that you are going to be a good stepmom and ensuring that he is going to be the best dad that he can possibly be? And again, that divorce was nasty. She went through a very nasty divorce before she met Jeezy, or before she even went into the relationship with Jeezy. So she doesn't go into the same routine that she did before, which was looking at love and depending on love. How is she going to make sure that take different steps not to go down the same path? And coming up after the break, we're going to talk about Adele's private divorce that is leaving her to pay half of what she's worth. Stick around.
Cass, take care of that. Jordan and Keith is Entertainment Tonight meets Access Hollywood.
I'm Jordan. The guy laughing, that's Keith.
Yeah, I'm Keith.
An all-inclusive look of pop culture.
Welcome back. So our girl Adele, who has given us hits such as Hello, Chasing Pavement, and Rumor Has It, is going through a private, nasty divorce that has costed her millions. After years of drifting apart because of her career and a said rumor of Simon cheating, the couple decided to divorce. Sources say that the Los Angeles court granted Adele's request to keep everything under wraps, but news has been revealed that the divorce is becoming very nasty, and it's coming to about $171 million. Adele is reportedly ruled to pay her ex-husband of 3 years over $140 million, which is roughly half of what she is worth. And if those of you who do not know, Adele is worth $184 million. The good news is that the two decided on sharing custody of their 7-year-old son, Angelo. So how do I feel about this situation? I feel proud about the fact that they realized that they were drifting apart and they said, you know what, this is not working. Let's just end it. Okay. And I also like the fact that she wanted things to be kept private, because so many times what we see in the limelight is that we see, these celebrities going through this very private matter in a very public scene. So that's what I like. And when I was doing my research on Adele, because this whole thing popped up on my Twitter, when I tried to do more research on it, there wasn't a lot about the divorce. And I like it, but I don't like it. I like it because that shows that she likes to keep her life private, because this is her life. She doesn't like to be in the spotlight like that. Now, how do I feel about the court supposedly paying? How do I feel about the court reportedly ruling to have her pay her ex-husband $140 million? I have so many questions. So many questions as to why. Was he in the studio with her? Like, what was he doing? I understand that he was her husband and he's the father of her child, but what is he doing? Then you also have to ask yourself, why is Simon getting paid so much? Why was it ruled that Adele would have to pay him half of what she's worth? What did he do? Did he help her write songs? He was, the father of her child. Sure, he is the father of her child, and he was also her husband. But at the same time, like, what did he do? Why is he being granted half of what Adele is worth? Why? Like, there's so many holes that I feel like we're missing. So again, this is a good thing as to why, Adele is private with her life, because she wants to keep her life private and her business public, which is good. But at the same time, something doesn't sound right. And then you also have to ask yourself, if this is going to somehow affect their child. But I also want to know if things are going to start getting nastier because of the child. I also have to wonder who's going to be the sole parent that the child is with. Yes, they're sharing custody, but where is that child going to be sleeping? Is it going to mostly be with the father, or is it going to be with Adele? And then I also have to wonder, okay, so why are they giving this man who allegedly, so it wasn't actually found, but he allegedly cheated on Adele. So I just have so many questions as to why this man is being granted half of everything that she's worth. He was her husband for only 3 years. He allegedly cheated. Yes, he's the father of her child, but I don't feel like it's worth half of what she's worth. I just don't. No way, shape, or form do I feel like that's fair. That is what the court supposedly, ruled for her to pay. We won't really find that out until, everything is done, until their divorce is settled. And I believe then the news will officially pick up. As for right now, these are reports, meaning that they're reported. We don't know if they're true. We don't know if they're facts. I personally hope it's not true, because this is half of everything that she is worth. And I think it's already a mixture of emotions. So I just, being Adele, and this is just a mixture of a lot of emotions. But what do you guys think? Do you feel that, this supposed alleged ruling is right? Or do you feel that, her husband, her ex-husband should have got something that was far less? Let us know by leaving a comment. Coming up after the break, I'm going to be talking all about Tiger King, or something about Tiger King.
The GSMC Life and Happiness Podcast takes you on a journey of exploration. We'll discuss tried and true methods alongside the latest trends of how to best live your life to its fullest and happiest. From psychology to meditation, science to self-help books, the GSMC Life and Happiness Podcast will help you to discover what makes you happy and how you can live life being the best you possible. Download the GSMC Life and Happiness Podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
Okay, so you guys, I am watching Tiger King. I'm probably like the last person to watch Tiger King because it's been so popular. It's been all over my Twitter, all over my Instagram, all over my Facebook. Oh my goodness, Tiger King is everywhere. I've been watching the series, and I think for a fact Carol killed her husband. I am not done watching the series, but all I can say is, like, what in the world am I watching? There's like so many twists, so many turns, plot twists. There's like obstacles. This show is everywhere, and I like it a lot. I shouldn't like it a lot because it's so interesting. It's different, but I do. But anyway, I've learned that, something that I've learned with watching Tiger King is that Joe, he's a guy he has a lot of aspirations. He does. He has a lot of aspirations. However, I feel like he doesn't focus on himself. I feel like he focuses on everyone else except for himself. Because what I've noticed throughout the series is that he is worried about his tigers and Carol. Like every time I turn around, he has Carol in his mouth. He's worried about Carol. Carol. Then Carol sued him, and then it was Carol. Sometimes my tigers, Carol. So during that whole time that he's worrying about someone else, he never really sat down and worried about himself, which is why he was in the sick mode that he was in. He was too busy talking about someone else, which got him into the situation that he was in, which in the end really messed him up. So that's what I'm getting so far from Tiger King. Hopefully by the next podcast, I will be officially done with Tiger King, and then I can talk to you guys more about Tiger King again, because it's everywhere. It's everywhere. Oh, my goodness. And with that being said, this is the end of today's social media news podcast. I would like to thank you for listening to the GSMC Social Media News Podcast, once again brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I would like to ask that you please remember to subscribe to the show and to write a nice review because that really helps us out. Also, if you can, please follow us on all of our social media handles, i.e. Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And finally, I would like to thank you guys, and I want you guys to have a good night, a good day, and everything in between. Bye.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Social Media Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.